the AI adventures. I'm going to show how ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot helped with the Data Cloud Diaries coding. Hello, I've been working on the Data Cloud Diaries, writing C# code that's pulling from an API and feeding into Data Cloud. And while doing that, I've been doing it in Visual Studio in C#, and I had the GitHub Copilot installed, and I found it almost amazing. It was wonderful to work with. It's got its nuances. At the same time, I use ChatGPT 4, and I've been using it for a myriad of different tasks, and I decided to try it with some of my coding, and that was also helpful. So combining the two, I was able to code really fast. I do find it still requires an intelligent, trained developer, but I'm going to show you how you can move very fast. I'm going to show some of my past code, and then I'm also going to grab some new items. So we'll see it as it comes, brand new things, watching them in action. So this is just an impromptu how I'm using ChatGPT plus Copilot to do some API development in C#. So here's my C#. Here's my C# looking at some of the code. We're going to be just looking at the code from a high level. I have a main, which has a setup for a config. And I'm alternating between a direct run and a bulk, which I'm commenting out. Remember, this is not production code, but demo code. And here I have an arrow call. And I have one where I'm making a direct call using an airport object. And I have some start time and end times. I'm calling a flight API. And then what I'm doing is doing a stream reader and stream writer. So first, I'm going to show you some really cool power of Copilot. So I'm going to take this run direct API, which runs a single block with a single date time. And I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to paste a new version. We're going to call it run bulk test. So this is a method called run bulk test. What I'm going to do is I want to run it. This API has a limit where it can only run for 12 hours. So what I'm going to do is it can only be run in 12-hour increments, and I want to run it many times. So I'm going to highlight this method, and I'm going to describe the problem to Copilot. Let's see what it comes up with. And I don't know what it'll come up with. So I Command I, and I say, I am calling the flight API with a 10-minute range. I can call it with up to 12 hours. Can you update the code to call it in 12-hour increments for 7 days? So that was just an English sentence describing the problem. And let's see what it comes up with. I do not know what it's going to come up with. So I'm already seeing what it's doing, and it's a little off because it's doing the 12 hours. So let's take a look at this. So this is both good, but not great. So what we're going to do is we're going to paste this code in and we're going to examine it. And this is a perfect example of things going right. So my start date time is here. Ooh, no, it's actually looking good. It has a final end date time of a week later. And it is looping, saying while start date is less than the end time. This is good code. My end time is 12 hours later, and then start time equals the end time. So this is actually very good code, all done with just a single sentence. Now I'm going to show you a couple other variances I gotten. So when I asked something similar, what I ended up getting was right here, is I got a loop inside of a loop. So what I have is a start time with a 12-hour jump And then I've got a 7-day loop, a 14-day loop, and a 12-hour. So it's a loop and a loop. And this was mostly correct, except it was skipping every 2 days. And what I found was that it had the end time here incrementing by 12 hours, but it had another increment. So I would say it was 90% there with just a small debugging error, the double skip. Then I tried it again a second time on bulk test 3 with a slightly different prompt. I didn't record the exact prompt. And what I got was a final end time. Looks like what we got. And we got a while loop with a final end time. And that worked nicely. And then we have the one we got, which is a while loop and a final end time. So 2 out of 3 times it came up with very good code. So I'm showing you how you can take existing code, highlight it, and Copilot will tell you how to improve it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go beyond and we're going to use ChatGPT. So here's an API. We've been calling the schedule right here of flights taking off and landing from within an airport. This second call is a list of all airports. And what I want to do is I want to be able to pull airports and deserialize this into C#. So what I'm going to do is copy this code of the response payload. And now we're going to switch to ChatGPT. So here is a prompt for GPT-4. I'm writing a C# project that is pulling JSON data from a web service. I want to have C# structures to deserialize the data. Here is the sample payload. And I'm just going to paste the JSON payload. Normally, I would build this in about 10 or 15 minutes, a few minutes to write it. I would be designing the object. There are some websites you might be able to find out there. But what I have right now is I just gave it a single English sentence. And it is right now generating what I'm looking for. Now, it may not be perfect, but I can work with it. So I can already see that I have a route, search by, an item, and a location. So this is already showing me a payload almost usable. So if I scroll right up here and go to the time, so it's got items and then the payload. So what we can do, I can be grabbing this C# code and pull it into my project. And this will allow me, and it's even giving me the deserialize command for the Newtonsoft. So this is giving me code ready to go with instructions. So I'm showing you how it can take existing code and it can generate it. I'm showing how it can take these structures and generate them from JSON. Now, another thing I needed to do was I needed to take a structure that I had here, and it's in my data cloud, which would be this object, this flattened airport traffic. And one thing I needed to do is I needed to feed this into Salesforce for defining the data stream. And I needed what's called a YAML file. And so it was an open API spec YAML. Instead of having to worry too much about it, I copy this code. And here's a simple sentence. I'm working with a C# structure that I need to use whole data. I need to provide an open API spec YAML file for this. And then I just paste in my class file. And so I've asked for an open API YAML that I could use to feed into Salesforce. And already with just a single command, it's generating a YAML file that I can use and define the spec. Now the 200 and the 400s are as important, but what Salesforce needs for Data Cloud are all these format data specs, and they're all coming across. So I can feed this data spec right here into Salesforce Data Cloud. The other nice thing is it gives you other additional instructions that you can read and go. So when you need entire field mappings, you can cut and paste it in. I like ChatGPT 4. When I like my inline, I like being able to write my code right here. And let's do another quick little example. So if I'm right here and I have this start and end time, and I wanted to log it, I'm going to build a log, kind of a log file. But let's watch how Copilot is going to help. I'm going to go string log message and look at the log message that's being suggested. Without me finishing log message, it is already suggesting the call, the parameters, and the start and end time. So with just beginning my thought, it knows where I am, what I'm doing, and with a tab, it has built a beautifully formatted log message. And so that is what I think is amazing, is it's reading what I'm doing, it's seeing what I have been doing above, and it's guessing what I might want it to look like. So this is giving me a beautiful log message without me just barely typing. So the combination of these two tools, I was able to write code a lot faster than I have before. Now, it still needed to be in control. I was the one deciding which were my classes, what were my subclasses, what are going to be the parameters, but it was looking ahead. And in some cases you saw where it jumped ahead and started typing, I could ignore it. Or other cases, I could just hit tab and accept it. So I'm very impressed with the Copilot, very helpful. I also like my ChatGPT 4, which has a large amount of power, the power of the 4 over the 3.5. And I like being able to just describe something abstractly or paste in whole blocks, and it comes and answers my questions beautifully. So between the two, the ChatGPT 4 and the Copilot, I'm finding I'm really being accelerated in my development, but you do need to watch the code. I do examine all the code. I have found mistakes, hallucinations, but I still find that I'm ahead by using it. And as long as I know, it's kind of like somebody whispering in your shoulder, know to ignore them, when to ignore them, and grab that whole mapping file when you need it. I hope this is helpful, and I'll be talking more about AI in subsequent sessions. Thank you for joining, getting help from AI. Come back, same bat time, same bat channel, www.stevetechark.com and Steve Tech Arc on YouTube.